All right, let's jump right in. We're about to head way back to the 8th century BC to explore one of the toughest gigs in human history, trying to deliver a message of pure doom to a nation that's absolutely convinced it's on top of the world. This is the incredible story of the prophet Amos. And really, that's the whole question, isn't it? I mean, how do you do it? Imagine trying to tell everyone the party's over while the music is still blasting and the good times are rolling. That was the impossible mission handed to Amos. So to really get why his job was so hard, we have to set the scene. We're in the northern kingdom of Israel and, well, things had never, ever been better. Seriously. To get a feel for this time, you have to know who was in charge. His name was Jeroboam II, and under his rule, Israel was living through a legit golden age. Their borders were huge, their military was flexing its muscles, and they were rolling in wealth. From the outside looking in, it absolutely looked like they were living in a time of unbelievable divine favor. But here's the kicker. The biblical writers are super clear that this prosperity was not a reward for being good. In fact, they described the king as evil. No, this was an act of mercy, a final grace period, really. It was one last chance for the entire nation to turn back to God before it was way too late. So did they take that chance? Nope, not even close. Instead of gratitude, this unearned blessing led to this deep, dangerous sense of complacency. They completely forgot they needed God and started thinking all their success was their own doing. And that, my friends, created the perfect storm for a prophetic wake-up call. And right into the middle of this perfect storm of self-satisfaction walks our guy, Amos. His job? To stroll into the heart of this nationwide party and announce that judgment was literally just around the corner. And what made him perfect for this impossible job was just how unlikely he was. See, Amos wasn't some career state-approved prophet. He was a total outsider, a wealthy landowner from the rival southern kingdom of Judah. The Hebrew word used for him, nokad, is even used to describe a king. So you've got this foreigner who's not even a real prophet coming in with this terrible news. It just made it all too easy for the people of Israel to just dismiss him. So you're probably wondering, where was all this judgment supposed to come from? Well, while Israel was enjoying its temporary peace and quiet, a massive storm was gathering on the horizon. The absolutely brutal Neo-Assyrian Empire was waking up. This timeline really lays out why Israel felt so safe. I mean, look at it. About a century earlier, they'd fought Assyria to a draw. And then, for almost 75 years, Assyria was weak, dealing with its own problems. That decline is exactly what allowed Israel's golden age to even happen. But then, in 745 BC, a new, ruthless, and ambitious leader named Tiglath-Pileser III grabs the throne, and everything, and I mean everything, was about to change. And let's be crystal clear about who we're dealing with here. The Neo-Assyrians weren't just your average conquerors. They literally weaponized terror. Their entire strategy was built on being so shockingly violent and cruel that other nations would just surrender to avoid facing them. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. That's a direct quote from an Assyrian king, Sennacherib, basically bragging about his conquests. Their own artwork, their own inscriptions, they're filled with these graphic images of impalement and flaying people alive. This was the horrific force heading straight for a comfortable, complacent Israel. Okay, so this creates a huge theological problem, right? If Israel is God's chosen people, how could some pagan empire ever defeat them? Wouldn't that mean their God was weak or that the Assyrian gods were stronger? Well, the prophets, they offered a completely radical explanation. And here it is. This is the mind-blowing reinterpretation they offered. The prophets declared that Assyria wasn't just some random geopolitical enemy. Oh no, they were an instrument, a tool. They were, in the words of Isaiah, the rod of God's anger. God himself was going to use this violent pagan empire to bring judgment on his own unfaithful people. What's so wild is this dual perspective. From Assyria's point of view, they were just building an empire, doing what empires do. But the prophets saw this higher purpose at work. God was masterfully using their evil intentions to accomplish his own righteous judgment, all without them having a single clue. This was a completely revolutionary idea at the time. A victory for Assyria would not mean that the God of Israel had been defeated, just the opposite. It would prove that he was in control of the entire game board, using even the most powerful and wicked kings on earth like pieces in his grand design.
Okay, so let's bring it back to Amos on the ground. How could he possibly get anyone to believe this horrifying future was real? Well, it turns out he got some unexpected and quite literally earth shattering divine help.
Now, remember the timing of all this. Amos is preaching total destruction sometime between 760 and 750 BC. This is the absolute peak of the party. The real threat from Assyria is still decades away. Who in their right mind is going to believe him?
2 years. That's how long it took for his impossible warning to get a terrifying confirmation. The book of Amos itself says his prophecies were delivered 2 years before the earthquake.
And we're not talking about a minor tremor here. This was a catastrophic earthquake. A physical shot across the bow from God that basically stamped a divine seal of approval on Amos's unpopular message. It was so massive, it was remembered for hundreds of years. And what's absolutely incredible is that modern archaeologists have actually found evidence of this exact earthquake in a destruction layer at the ancient city of Hazor, dated right to the mid-8th century BC. The warning was real. And that brings this 2,700-year-old story right into our lives today. Israel's greatest period of security became its moment of greatest spiritual blindness, making them ignore the disaster that was just over the horizon. Which leaves us with a pretty heavy question to think about. What warnings are we most likely to ignore when we feel the most safe and secure?